Friends? This one? Friends? Did you talk with your mask on up here?
If you're by yourself, yes. I mean, if you're by yourself, no. It's also
Friends, we are going to begin the funeral service. If everyone would have a seat, please. We're going to begin the funeral service for Mrs. K. Friedman. If you have a cell phone, I'd ask you kindly to place it into silent mode at this time or turn it completely off. I'd also like to welcome family, extended family, and friends visiting the funeral via live stream. Thank you for attending on behalf of the family. Services will be conducted by Rabbi Amy Memes Fowler, and she's going to start with the ancient tradition of cutting of the kriya. So if we could have the family members with the ribbons on, please rise.
Death has taken our beloved K. Friedman. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence, there is lamentation. In their tears, there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God, and be with them. For Kay's love that united us in life, in which death cannot sever. For her companionship that we shared along life's path, in which continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of her heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness, and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. And at this time, as Kay's family is seated in the first row and extended family throughout the sanctuary, we feel the presence of people who are here physically, but we also feel the presence of those who are supporting you through the blessing of technology. And we thank them for their condolences and comfort they offer at this time as well. In this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures that brings us the ever-new message of God's nearness. It tells us of our kinship with the Creator, in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. And so the words from our sacred scriptures that we hear at this time are the 23rd Psalm. I welcome to the Bima at this time Rick and Carol's clergy, Cantor Howard Friedman and Rabbi Rachel Weiss, to share with us the 23rd Psalm.
מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לא אחסר, מינות דשא ירביצני, על מי מנוחות ינח עליני. נפשי ישובב, ינחני ומעגל צדק, ינחני ומעגל צדק, למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגיא צל מוות, לא יירא רע, כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תוך לפני, שולחן נגד צוררי, נשען טוב בשמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה. אך טוב החסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. אדוני רואי לא אחסר, אדוני רואי לא אחסר.
The source of life is my shepherd, and I shall never be in need. Amid the choicest grasses does God set me down. God leads me beside the calmest of waters and restores my soul. God takes me along the paths of righteousness in keeping with the honor of God's name. Even should I wander in a valley of the darkest shadows, I will not be afraid. You are with me. Your power and support are there to comfort me. You set in front of me a table in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely goodness and loving kindness will follow me all the days of my life, and I shall come to dwell inside your house forever and ever.
The following is adapted from Proverbs 31. Eshet chayil mi'itzah, a woman of valor who can find. She is more precious than fine pearls. Her husband trusts in her, and so he lacks nothing. She does him good, never harm all the days of her life. She perceives that her labor is rewarding. Her candle burns on into the night. She reaches out to those in need and extends her hands to the poor. She is clothed in strength and dignity, and she faces the future cheerfully. She speaks with wisdom. The law of kindness is on her lips. Her children rise up and bless her. Her husband sings her praises. Many daughters have done valiantly, but you excel them all. At this time, I would like to invite members of Kay's family to come and share their words with us. And so we are going to be inviting her grandsons, Gabriel and Aaron, her son David, and grandson Alex. I'll ask that you come up to the bima one at a time to share your words. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here today. Just wanted to say a few words about my grandmother, Kay. Having her as a grandmother was a gift that I'll always cherish. From all the time I spent with her over the years, there are 3 major lessons that I learned from her. The first was the joy of life. She taught me that life is too short not to look around and find enjoyment wherever it exists, whether along the first baseline at Wrigley Field, a week in South Haven, Michigan, or a cruise through the Panama Canal. She spoiled us with trips to Disney World and Caribbean vacations, but most importantly, she believed in bringing the family together for a good time, and nothing made her happier. The second thing was the power of healing. Even though Kay retired from the nursing profession, she never stopped being a healer for the family, especially during Howard and Rick's times of need. Kay dropped everything for those around her and showed me personally the power of caring for others. Her famous mantra was, "I gave life to Rick once and I'll do whatever it takes to give life to him again." And she did. And her spirit lives on in his recovery. The final lesson that Kay taught me was the most precious of all, giving on to the next generation. During the month after our son Levi was born this past June, Kay indulgently hosted us in her home to help us raise the newborn. Each morning around 6 a.m. after a night of one wake-up after another, I would hand Levi off to Kay. As she reached for him, she was always beaming from ear to ear at the chance to bond with her great-grandson. During this month, she showed us how to swaddle him, change his diaper, and give him a bath. She gave us our first lesson in how to nurture a family, starting with the roots. Throughout the time that I knew her, Kay had a special kind of love that transcended words or actions. It hung in the air and permeated the atmosphere of a Sunday brunch or family vacation. She gave everything she had to everyone she knew and never turned down the opportunity to help a friend, a family member, or a stranger in need. Now, I will miss her carefully packaged shipments of mandel bread and her radiant presence at each life event, because she was always there for each one. In the end, it comforts me to know that our son started his life absorbing her intense warmth and love that will now live on in him and in all of us here. May her memory be a blessing.
I want to echo Gabriel's comments. Just blown away how many people are here, and even more streaming the funeral service, I think. So I always knew when Grandma passed, it would be a weird range of emotions, just highlighted by profound sadness, of course, but also just immense gratitude for everything that she meant in all of our lives. She had an innate ability to forge a relationship with just about anyone. And so in some ways she was ageless as she transcended generations, and people gravitated to her warmth and kindness. So when I posted about her passing, I feel like a constant theme that I received in the comments was that she was a bonus part of so many people's families and lives. And in my lifetime specifically, and that of my brothers, she was everyone's grandmother and everyone's mother-in-law. It's weird not seeing her here because Kay was truly at everything, as Gabriel said. She was a fixture at so many happy occasions too, but her and Howard were always here for many exceedingly difficult moments. In my own marriage, I value what Grandma and Grandpa had. Grandma was such a good complement to Grandpa, and hardly a day goes by where I don't think of their generosity and hospitality that they provided for so many people. In the 7 years since Grandpa passed, Kay's strength and resilience were truly impressive. Even without Grandpa, she kept her sense of adventure, finding new journeys on cruises or with friends or wintering in Florida, which was still a goal of hers this winter, and she had several future trips planned. Her resiliency has been on display throughout the pandemic as she adapted to different realities, but even in these past 2 years, she got to have so many moments that will stick with us forever. So finally, after a lifetime of her giving to us, it felt so good to be able to give her a great-grandchild, my son Zev Lawrence, who is named after Kay's father, Larry, and our daughter Rose Helena, named after her mother. And she and her cousin Levi this year had special bonds with her, even with the 85 years of separation. Kay's kindness and her generosity will resonate forever. Even at her end, she never stopped thinking of other people. And I was blown away that she even got gifts for Zev and Rose for Hanukkah this week. Our lives are made better by the people like Kay that we are so fortunate to cross paths with. Thank you, Grandma, for changing all of our lives.
Thank you all so much for coming today to help honor the memory of my mother. Those of you who have met Kay already know what a joyous, capable, and socially gregarious woman she was. My sister Beth and my brother Rick and I were fortunate indeed in having her as our mother. Kay Friedman exuded a special power. I call it vitamin K. What was this special power that she daily gifted to us growing up in the sphere of her influence? Here is a short list. Kay was fun. She was seldom someone who would sit around and do nothing. She would take us places. When we were very young, it was the beach in Evanston or the Museum of Science and Industry, seeing Ella Jenkins at Ravinia, or sing-alongs at the Old Town School of Folk Music, a walk in Grant Park, or she would just order us out of the house to play. On Saturdays, we loved to listen to Chuck Shaden's old-time radio shows together on the radio. And on Sunday nights, we would often order takeout Chinese food, eating together on TV trays in front of Lassie in the wonderful world of Disney. She was an industrious baker, teaching us all to be competent in the kitchen while always making it fun, patiently letting us help her step by step, and rewarding us by letting us lick the spoon or bowl. She was determined to share with us her love of Judaism, and because of this, our social lives were centered at Temple Judea in Skokie under Rabbi Weiner. We had a wonderfully large extended family, and my mother loved to be the hostess and bring everyone together. However, she told me recently how important it was to her that we had shared many Thanksgiving weekends in retreat at Olansang Ruby Union Institute, learning, playing, and singing together as a Jewish community. The talented Debbie Friedman was our song leader there when she was just 16 years old, and my mother was a lifelong fan of hers. Kay also helped us join in many secular activities as well: ice skating, skiing, Girl Scouts, Cub Scouts, and she used her special powers to get my dad to bring us to Indian Guide father and son sleepover events as well. All of our birthday parties were themed in some way, and most of the treats were handmade. She would bake for our school bake sales and would joyfully read with us and encourage us in our learning. When we were a bit older, she would take us on excursions to Phil's Beach, and because of her gregariousness, we were often joined in these adventures by our neighbors, the Kaminers or the Abrams, and met new people there, as she would willingly talk with anyone. She was happy as well to give herself a break from the daily grind of parenting by sending us away for part of the summer to overnight camps. These camps, first YMCA, then Olansang, and finally Habonim Camp Tavor, were important growth catalysts that helped us in becoming the strong, healthy adults that we all grew into. While Kay was not politically active, particularly when we were young, I was, and she never discouraged me and my siblings from expressing ourselves at protests downtown or canvassing for progressive candidates. She also let us be explorers. I spent a good portion of my youth exploring the forest preserves near us with friends, occasionally getting ourselves in trouble, falling into icy rivers, cutting ourselves on broken glass while swimming in a pond, etc. Each time, Kay would use her calm demeanor to help us heal quickly and move on, but never discouraged us from further adventures. She would be by our side, and when we were ill, she punished us swiftly. She would be by our side when we were ill. She punished us swiftly when we did wrong, while making sure that we knew that we were loved. When we began high school, she went to nursing school to help support our family, working first at the U of I Hospital's oncology ward in Chicago, often working the night shift. Later on, she switched hospitals into the north suburbs, eventually specializing as an interstomal therapist, helping patients suffering with colon cancer. She reluctantly supported me at 16 when I decided to sign up for the 27th Habonim workshop at Kibbutz Gesher Aziv. I went to Israel 6 months before the year-long program, met relatives there, and traveled alone all over that country. When I was invited by the yeshiva folk at Esha Torah in Jerusalem to stay there instead of going to the kibbutz, she talked me into sticking with my original plan, but then insisted on meeting with the missionary rabbi there when she came to visit. When I decided to explore a career in the arts, both Kay and Howard were supportive, even though they were fearful about my future prospects in such a difficult and competitive field. When my wife, Sarah, and I were getting married, it was just after 9/11, and Kay insisted on her and my dad getting on one of the first flights available after that tragedy, to be there to help us celebrate our love. Similarly, when our son was born, she was there as soon as she could be, and did so with each of her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. When my brother had his traumatic brain injury, she dropped everything to be by his side and help him through the difficult rehab process. Kay loved to travel, and both my parents loved to sail the world on the most luxurious cruises they could afford, and made many friends there that lasted for many years. She loved Frank Sinatra and Broadway shows, and eventually learned to appreciate opera after my dad bought lyric opera season tickets. She loved the theater as well. Subscriptions to the Goodman and Steppenwolf were annual purchases. And she loved baseball. Well, at least she loved the Chicago Cubs. She had season tickets on the first base line for 25 years and loved when they won the pennant in 2016. Finally. She loved to share those blessings with others as well, especially with Aaron, Gabriel, and Daniel. So what is vitamin K? What was her special power? It was simply looking at the bright side of things in our world. Family, friends, community, ritual and tradition, joy, tzedakah, giving, service, creativity, travel, and fun. It is about focusing on the lightness in the world, even though she knew of the darkness that exists all around. And she was a light in our lives, and a light in the lives of everyone she met. Thank you.
Thank you. It's really an impossible task to put into words how special my Grandma Kay was. She truly was the powerhouse of the family. If she wanted something, she would always find some way to make it happen. When COVID first hit, she was already planning her next big vacation. She always loved to travel and never wanted to be in one spot for very long. I remember my mom and dad, David and Sarah, would always make a point to fly across the country from Portland to Chicago at least once every year for me to visit with her and my grandpa Howard. For as long as I can remember, she was always a fierce advocate for me, as she was for everyone she loved. When I first came out as transgender, and I'll always remember this, she called my dad to tell him about how she had attended some group meeting for people whose grandkids are trans. No matter what, I could always count on her acceptance and love was something she had an endless supply of. It seemed like every day I'd hear stories relayed via my dad about a new friend she'd made. She brought a real sense of unconditional love and kindness to wherever she went. Though she may have passed, her spirit will live forever in the hearts of those whose lives she touched and in the love and kindness she always showed.
Thank you, because those words come from the heart and hearts of those who really knew Kay in a much closer way than I did. Although, as I was speaking with some people before this service, there's sometimes I just officiate, and there's other times where I feel a certain closeness with a person who's died, and I feel that way today with Kay. Excuse me. The day that Kay Friedman died, some of her family gathered for a Shabbat dinner and ate that Joseph's coat challah, which Kay had baked a year ago for Parashat Vayeshev, and put in the freezer to be eaten on the exact Shabbat that it was. Kay created that Joseph coat challah early on in Beth Emet's challah midrash cycle, and she set the bar high that day for others who would follow, baking and interpreting the Torah through the dough. This challah midrash is a perfect example of how Kay wove together two passions in her life, Judaism and baking. And if you want to see a picture of it, you can go to Instagram, Beth Emet Challah Midrash, and you'll see Kay's bright smile holding that challah up. And today, we're in the midst of Chanukah. Today is the third day of this festival of lights. From the beginning of Hanukkah, we light one candle, one flame, and then increase that light each night by adding another flame until the 8th night, when our Chanukiot are a full blaze of glory. When the rabbis of the Talmud were arguing as to how we should light our menorah on the festival of Hanukkah, one rabbi by the name of Shammai said that we should start with the 8 and then take away a light each night so that would remind us how many days are left of the festival. And then another rabbi by the name of Hillel disagreed. The two rabbis often disagreed. He said that we start with the one light on the first night and increase the light each night. Rabbi Hillel, as many of us know, won the argument. And the reason why? Because we always increase rather than decrease when it comes to matters of joy. As we celebrate the life of Kay Friedman, let us reflect on a life lived with that increased light, blessings and joy. And that was Kay's way of looking at the world, with that brightness, with that positivity, with that increased joy. For Kay was a beloved wife, dear sister, loving mother, cherished grandmother, proud great-grandmother, adored cousin, relative, loyal friend, daughter, and more. And she will be dearly missed. Kay née Levinson was the oldest of two daughters to parents Rose and Lawrence Levinson, Zichronam Livracha. Born during the height of the Depression, multiple generations of the family lived together, and Kay's grandparents needed their children's assistance. So Kay's parents and aunts and uncle lived together in that home with the grandparents until she was about 6 years old. Those formative years taught her about the importance of family taking care of one another. And Kay would spend the rest of her life caring for others as she cared for her parents as they aged, taking turns with her sister Gayla. When Kay was 9 years old, her baby sister Gayla arrived. With this gap in age, Kay was like a second mother to her, to you. There's the story, Gayla, that you shared when Kay was 10 years old and your father was changing your diaper, and Kay was seeing that your father was struggling a bit. So she gently came over and said something like, "Daddy, I'll do it." During your childhood, you two lived separate lives because of the age difference. And then when you turned 18, your relationship also took a turn. And that gap in age grew closer as you two became friends as well as sisters. Kay was the matron of honor at your wedding, and she developed her own dear and respected relationship with Michael, and she was a fond aunt to Robert. Some of these stories that I'll mention we may have heard before, but they are certainly worth repeating. It was at the University of Illinois that Kay met Howard. She'd been walking in the hall of her co-op when a friend was on the hall payphone. The friend said to Kay, "Here, you talk to him." So Kay got on the phone and spoke for quite some time with this young man. It was Howard on the line. About a week later, when Howard learned that Kay had received ice skates for her birthday, he said, "Let's go ice skating." And so it was their first date. About a year and a half later, 1 week after his graduation, they were married. Some joke that Kay went to college and got her MRS degree. And because Howard was ahead of Kay in school, and after he graduated and they were married, they went back to Chicago. That was June of 1955. And without a remote learning option, Kay left college without completing her studies. 10 years later, she went back to school to pursue her dream of graduating from nursing school. She was studying while her children were in school themselves, and in this way, she was a role model of what it takes to achieve your academic goals and career goals and have a family. Kay worked as a nurse at the University of Illinois hospitals, which offered 5 weeks of vacation. She worked many nights, as we heard, so that she could be at home with the kids. Later, she worked at hospitals in the northern suburbs, and her nursing practice involved wound care in addition to the field of oncology when she was working with people who had colon cancer. And her patients loved her. What a perfect career match for someone who was already so giving and caring. She made it her life's work. Kay and Howard made a wonderful couple. They balanced one another and helped each other grow. The two started their life in modest conditions, and it was a struggle in the beginning, especially when the children were little. But they persevered by being a support for one another. Kay introduced Howard to theater, and he shared with Kay his love of classical music and opera. Howard and Kay also enjoyed traveling and cruising all over the world and learning about different countries and cultures. And Kay developed her own special relationships with Howard's side of the family, with his brother Mark and nieces Vanessa and Michelle. Our condolences to you as well. Kay helped Howard understand the importance of synagogue membership. And in some reasons, we're here right in the right place today, in the synagogue. The synagogue, no matter what the one that Kay was connected to, was an important part of her life. And so Howard supported Kay. He joined Kay in helping shape Temple Judea in its early years. And both of them served on the board of directors. Kay served as education vice president and was active in the sisterhood. Temple Judea Mitzvah became a place where they met dear friends and socialized, like the Chavurah of 15 families in which they became very active. Kay and Howard, along with Seymour and the late Toby Lipton, donated the new Reform Sidurim prayer books, Mishkan Tefillah, in honor of their 50th anniversaries, continuing to shape TJM as it entered the 21st century. Kay was a loving mother to Beth, David, and Rick, and then later to Sarah and Carol when you joined the family. You remember your mother being active and involved in your lives, especially when you were younger, but throughout your lives, whether it was planning activities for you or just letting you explore your own adventures. Beth, you recall your mom's leadership when you were in the Brownies and Girl Scouts, and her creativity in making your Halloween costumes, which always won you a prize, like the time you wore that set table and that beautiful blue skating dress. David, you remember, as you mentioned, how your mother was not so political, how she supported your involvement with demonstrations downtown and leading a boycott at your high school. Rick, you think of how she supported your love of baseball and in her own right was a big Cubs fan. She went with you to games like the Free Ladies' Day, and the family eventually became full season ticket holders. And for you, Rick, your mother was more than a cheerleader for you following your injury. She rented an apartment by the Rehab Institute so she could be with you over those 9 weeks. You describe your mother as having willed you back to life. Your mother was adventurous. You remember those family vacations like the trek on the train from Chicago out to San Francisco and the time you stayed at the American Youth Hostel in Washington, D.C. Your mother was much more of a trooper than your father. And so she challenged him to stay at that hostel because all you had to do was sleep there. And there was Beth's boat. Sailing and boating as a family was another adventure Kay enjoyed. The family went skiing, but Kay didn't care much for the cold. She preferred warmer destinations and loved going to Florida. For many years, Kay and Howard were snowbirds in Florida, and Kay, being gregarious, easily made new friends and created another community for herself down there. She could talk to anyone, and she looked for the good in others. Perhaps the best vacation times were those one-week getaways in South Haven, 20 years in a row, which Kay arranged in that cabin community. Kay was a proud grandmother of Aaron, Gabriel, Daniel, and Alex, and then to Elisha, Thúy-Lan, and Kiandokht when you came into the family. You remember how your grandma was interested and engaged in your life. She supported you in whatever you did, whether it was sports, and her presence at something like a t-ball game made you feel like it was a big deal. Your grandma and grandparents were most generous. They took Gabriel and Aaron and David on various trips following your becoming a bar mitzvah. Aaron to California, Gabriel to Hawaii, and David to London and Paris. She liked to share with you her love of music, art, and culture, and of course, the Cubs. When you graduated from college, an offer of a car was a gift from her. She researched and negotiated the bells and whistles, giving you a vehicle a little fancier than what you might have chosen for yourself. Your grandma enjoyed hosting others. Friends were welcome, and they could stay for dinner. Dan and Kiandokht, do you remember when you rented that Airbnb? And the whole idea was that you would be able to cook for her and share your cuisine with her, but Kay insisted every morning making breakfast for you. Your grandma loved all of you unconditionally, and she was very forgiving. She loved to be with you for the milestones in your lives, births, graduations, weddings, and more, traveling across the country to celebrate these high points in your life. She was also proud of all your accomplishments. Kay was an adoring great-grandmother, Bubby, of Zev, Rose, and Levi. She loved this role of being present in their lives and how special it was for her to care for Levi during the first month of his life. Precious to her were those outings on the park bench during COVID, that she could be with Zev and Rose and bond with them while holding them or giving them a bottle. And part of this ritual included Kay bringing bags filled with her challah and baked goods to give to the family. Another favorite activity was singing with the cantor on Friday mornings, where she zoomed in on one screen and the great-grandchildren with their grandma on another screen. And she was delighted to pass this love of Judaism down through the generations. And all the other things about Kay, how she was a dear and loyal friend to many, how she felt a great absence in her life when she lost her closest friends, whether through memory loss or illness. How when living in the house in Morton Grove, there were 3 families on the block that were like cousins, and they would often celebrate the Jewish holidays in one home or the other. How Kay and Howard often hosted the Seder and did it well, as many as 40-plus people fitting into their small home. How she was the matriarch of the family who kept in touch with cousins all over the country and in Israel, and a shout out to Susan Sachs, who's watching from Israel now. And whenever there was a simcha, Kay traveled to share in that family event. She loved a good party and socializing and wanted to be the center of attention at some of those celebrations. How she organized a reunion for her female cousins and other close relatives near Pittsburgh just weeks after the Tree of Life tragedy, and that became an important stop on the trip. How multiple family members who at some point in their lives had Kay take care of them following a surgery or the like. How she was very involved in Hadassah, one of her favorite recipients of tzedakah. How she had a love of books and reading and was part of a book group for 30 plus years. How when TJM became a part of Beth Emet, Kay jumped right in and was a regular on Shabbat and for adult ed programs, even when we moved to Zoom. How she enjoyed driving her red Cadillac, and it put a smile on my face to see K93 when I drove into the parking lot today. How she had a perpetually positive outlook on life. And all the other things about Kay Friedman that would take another 86 years to tell. Like the light of the Chanukiah, we increase each night of Hanukkah. The light of Kay Friedman has been shed on our lives and has increased our joy. Although she is gone from this world, something of Kay can never die. She lives on in our memories and in the hearts of all who knew and loved her. O God of comfort, comfort us now and help us to keep alive the memory, light, and blessings so dear to us in Kay Friedman. Amen. We pause now for a moment of silent meditation where each of us might recall a memory that we shared with Kay. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. We rise in body and spirit as we continue with El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein B'Maromim, Hamitzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, Im Kedoshim U'Tehorim, Kezohar Harakia, Mazirim et Nishmat Tova bat Yaakov Lezer v'Shoshana shehalcha le'olama barachamim yastireha B'seter knafav leolamim, v'yitzror b'tzror hachayim et nishmata, Adonai hu nachalata, v'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava, v'nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Kay Friedman, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God, you are her inheritance. May she rest in peace, and let us say, Amen.
This concludes the service at the synagogue. The family will receive condolences today beginning at 4:30 and through 8 p.m. at Chicago Jewish Funerals Chapel, 8851 Skokie Boulevard in Skokie. Again, they'll be 4:30 until 8. Interment will take place at Westlawn Cemetery, that's 7801 West Montrose Avenue in Norwich. The procession will be forming in the parking lot and proceeding east on Dempster Road. Please keep in mind a few safety features while in the procession. Keep your bright headlights on at all times. Put your emergency blinkers on. Attach the orange funeral sticker to the passenger portion of your front windshield. And we'll also attach a flag to the roof of your car. And please stay as close as safety permits to the car in front of you. The following people have been selected to serve as pallbearers. When I call your name, if you please step forward. Aaron Friedman, Gabriel Friedman, Daniel Friedman, Alex Friedman, Vanessa Sussman, and Robert Williger. At this time, I would ask that everyone please rise as the family, the rabbi, and Mrs. Friedman are escorted from the synagogue.